Here comes Speed Racer. He's a demon on wheels.
Hello, everybody. It is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome, and welcome to another Flashback episode over here on That's Comical. I'm hoping that all of you are well, and if you are watching, it happens to be a Wednesday. Happy New Comic Book Day. And this is actually the very first time that Andy will be joining me for an episode of Flashback. So, Andy, it's great to have you, and I'm really excited for tonight's video. I mean, the hype is real between the two of us and conversations that we've been having leading up to this. So I hope you're ready for tonight's discussion.
Yeah, I'm excited. I forgot this was a uniquely branded program, so yes, I'm happy for my quote unquote debut, but mostly happy to talk about the book. Looking forward
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, and this was a book that when I found out that it was coming out, I got extremely excited for a lot of different reasons. But it was actually, I think, one of those books that I was really trying to force upon the crew over here at That's Comical, just simply because of what it was and the creative team that was behind it. And it actually all went back to Free Comic Book Day in 2025, and that, of course, was a little Free Comic Book Day book that came out from Mad Cave Studios, and that was Speed Racer issue number 0. Now, it's funny because in the last episode of Flashback, Cammy and I talked about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures, the first miniseries, which would eventually lead into the Eric Burnham ongoing series that is now almost 40 issues strong, and it's absolutely wonderful. And she started the video asking me a question, asking why I didn't jump on the wagon with that right off the get-go. And the truth of the matter is, at the time when Saturday Morning Adventures came out, which was back in 2022, the whole nostalgia boom that I have now been experiencing for a few years had not really taken shape. There were not a lot of these nostalgic titles. The Energon universe hadn't even been put together and announced by Robert Kirkman. And there was just no interest at the time. But as the titles finally started coming out and the nostalgia bug was just hitting me big time, and here we are. So there was another little book that was part of this, and that was a book called Space Ghost, based on a Hanna-Barbera cartoon that is a real cult favorite, especially if there are Adult Swim fans out there and fans of Space Ghost Coast to Coast. I myself never watched either of them, but I was so interested in reading this comic book. And after I started reading Space Ghost, I loved it so much. And it was David Pepose who was the writer. And so when I found out that he was going to be the writer of Speed Racer, not only did I want to read a Speed Racer comic book, but I felt, based on how Space Ghost was going, that I was going to have such a great time with this, knowing that David Pepose was on board with this book. And let's just say that after reading issue number 0, the hype was real and I was ready for an ongoing series.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I read issue 0 when the Free Comic Book Day book came out. We were talking about it. I hadn't read Space Ghost like you had, but it was on your short list of books to be looking for. And so I had my eyes peeled on Free Comic Book Day to grab my own copy. And I'm really glad I did, because the issue 0 really did grab me, and I think did a really good job of setting up a decent amount of what the feel of the series would be. A lot of times those like introductory comics like that, they're still figuring things out. You have to like read a little bit into it, see if it's actually going to grip you. But I was sold from the jump. And then the series, I do think, ended up delivering on what I was hoping for after having read that really, really promising start. So yeah, I had a similar connection to it as you. I will say I did like Space Ghost Coast to Coast, so I at least did have some connection to that source material. And then talking back to Speed Racer itself, the source material for Speed Racer, I wouldn't say that I'm some sort of diehard Speed Racer fan. I'm familiar with the original cartoon. I doubt I've seen the entire run, but it was interesting to me. I was looking forward to seeing what they would do with the property. And you and I, Steve, were even talking the other night, not on the channel or anything, but just on the phone talking. about how the Speed Racer movie has seen this kind of resurgence recently, and you and I both love it and have for a while. So there was something about this book at this moment, the tone that it takes, the way it was told, that I think was really, really, really the exact right time for this book to hit us.
Well, I'm really glad that we went into that because my question to you was going to be, especially because of the fact that this is the flashback segment on our channel, we like to talk about the original source material and
Yeah.
see like where did we start. So yeah, I mean, how did I know about Speed Racer? Well, Speed Racer is something that I've known about for a long time because when my parents were little kids, they were watching Speed Racer in 1967.
Hmm.
It's an iconic cartoon because it was actually the third mainstream anime to actually make it from Japan to the United States. Before
Hmm.
that, there was Astro Boy, followed by Kimba the White Lion. And around, then again, I really am not sure. This may be the fourth because I don't know how much earlier Gigantor came to the United States, but around that time, and it was all from the anime company Tetsunoko. That's the reason why these animes were first introduced to the United States and how the United States really started to develop a cult following for it. And I mean, like, you take a look at where anime is now, but before that, you take a look at how it was becoming larger, especially in the underground scene
Hmm.
in the 70s and the 80s and all the way into the 90s. And
Hmm.
now it's like, now manga is beating Western comics in sales. But no, I never actually watched the 67 show. I know the theme song very well, thanks to my parents and knowing how popular it is. But yeah, the movie was my very first dive into Speed Racer. And I just remembered when I was seeing those trailers and it just looked so different and so unique,
Hmm.
especially because of the fact that this was not the first time that a live action anime was attempted by the Wachowskis, who directed this. They directed another little film. You probably heard about it. It was called The Matrix, which eventually became a trilogy as well. But these creators really wanted to try and bring anime to the world in a different way. And just the way that this movie looked and learning about how it was being filmed, I just knew that this was something that I personally had to experience. And it's crazy to believe that it went from a massive bust, and I, for one, still very much enjoyed it. I think I saw it in the movie theaters twice. Definitely not three times, but definitely more than once because I just couldn't get over the experience. But like you said, like all of a sudden, there's a big buzz around this movie. The fact that it is now almost 20 years old is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But the fact that people are now saying that it's one of the most overlooked movies in Hollywood history, how it's somewhat of a groundbreaking technological masterpiece. And, to a certain degree, I'm sort of happy about the fact that I was pretty much there on the ground floor telling people this movie is much better than what you think it might be. You have to give this movie a shot.
Hmm. Yeah. And look, I don't mean to monopolize it talking about the film, but I think there's a reason that it's having a moment right now. I mean, people have discovered how great it is, and I think that this is a wonderful time for us to be able to talk about a comic that draws from the same source material. And I think there's a if there's a common theme between what makes the two work, the comic that we're going to talk about more in depth, and the movie that's causing so much of this stir right now for whatever reason. It's that taking a look at the family side of things. And obviously, the movie has some astounding visuals and really did some amazing things with the cinematography, which is a whole other element to all of this. But when you get to the core of it, it doesn't need to have a story that grips people, right? And I think there's something simple but meaningful in what was pulled upon from the source material to tell that generational story, that family history, that place that one has within the patchwork of what came before them. And I think that just easily resonates with people. And so, for whatever you might think about the original Speed Racer being kind of campy, kind of corny, certainly with a really silly dub, I mean, like, it makes sense why you can turn this into something that's actually got a lot of heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing about the comic itself is like I discovered David Pepose through, believe it or not, through the YouTube community and a lot of negative press. A
Mm,
lot of people in the comic book world were talking about, and by why I say that, I mean on the YouTube space, not in the actual industry.
hmm
But a lot of people were talking about how David Pepose was not such a great writer. Like people didn't like what he was doing at the time. He was doing a Punisher series that a lot
mm,
of people in a certain way of thinking and a certain kind of group just felt that it was not their thing. Like he's been butchered, it's a bad thing. David Pepose is like, the worst of the worst. And then the funniest thing is when Space Ghost was announced in the early part of 2024 that it was coming out in May, a lot of those skeptics, even though they were not saying great things about David Pepose, they were all saying, I want to find out what this book is about. Like, I want to actually read this book. And that's also because at that time, we were now seeing the beginnings of the Energon universe. We were seeing the fact that we were getting some other nostalgic titles at the time, like Declan Shalvey's Thundercats had just
right.
recently come out. So there was reason to be interested, and there was a lot of intrigue around it. And so the funniest thing is when Space Ghost finally hit the shelves, all of these skeptics, and something, it sometimes is great to go into certain titles with extremely low expectations to no expectations whatsoever, and just get your mind completely blown,
hmm
and you're satisfied with
hmm
what you're reading. The world has changed now. Like people now say that David Pepose is an amazing writer. What he did for Space Ghost is wonderful. In a world where Marvel is just giving us one dud after another, the one title, like I think it was in 2025, that people just absolutely enjoyed was David Pepose's Cable Love and Chrome miniseries. And I got to
hmm
admit, that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So knowing that he was doing these amazing things with Space Ghost, then of course not only does Speed Racer get announced, but also there's a Captain Planet and the Planeteers title coming
Right.
out from Dynamite, where Space Ghost was. As a matter of fact, Speed Racer is not with them. That's with Mad
Mad
Cave.
Cave.
But
Yeah.
Mad Cave was also in the middle of a big nostalgic resurgence. Right now, three of my favorite titles are from Mad Cave, and they're all nostalgic titles. I absolutely love Alex Segura and Mark Marecki's Dick Tracy,
hmm
which is now close to 20 issues. Cammy and I actually reviewed the first story arc. People, if you're not reading Dick Tracy, you've got to check this book out. It is fantastic. The other Mad Cave title that I'm reading is also based on an anime that I had never seen before, and that was also a Tetsunoko product, the iconic 1972
Oh, right.
classic Gatchaman,
Gotcha,
which
man.
I now am watching the series of and totally understand why it's such an iconic show. But knowing that David Pepose was coming back to the nostalgia and writing Speed Racer, I was even more excited because if he was going to be giving me something as great as Space Ghost, I really wanted to see what he was going to do with Speed Racer. And Speed Racer, I will just say, became my favorite book of 2025. And I personally believe that as someone who loves Space Ghost, I think Speed Racer is better than
hmm
Space Ghost.
hmm
And I think it's just because of the elements that revolve around Speed Racer. There are some elements that are very similar to Space Ghost because the main theme in the Speed Racer book is without a doubt family. And I definitely will say that if there's one thing that David Pepose writes beautifully is the family element.
hmm
But also another thing we have to do is we have to talk about the great work of David Tinto in
hmm
Speed Racer. It is beautiful. And those covers, those A covers are gorgeous. Even though I'm not buying the A covers, I'm getting some of the variants, but
Yeah.
I adore the artwork in this book too.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think it's a perfect package. It's like every single time you read an issue and you put it down, you are so freaking satisfied and you still cannot wait for that next issue to arrive. It's
hmm
one of those titles that if you watch the Stats, Trends, and Picks episodes on the channel, there are certain weeks when a certain book is coming out. Like, I'm not even going to take a look at what other great books are coming out that week. Speed Racer is one of those books saying that if it's going to be coming out this week, it's going to be my top choice of the week. And it still has yet to let me down. Every single time, Speed Racer is my top read of the week when the new issue comes out.
Yeah, and let me say for a little bit while we're on the topic of how wonderful it looks, I'd say one of the things that gripped me immediately, which was nice that it was so the focus of issue 0, and then with issue 2 or 3, I'm blanking on how it's laid out, but specifically, it's the nighttime stuff that
Yes.
really gets me in that book. I love it. It's the there's a vibrancy to it that reads as both fantastical and comic-y, for lack of a better word, but also very kind of like real but modern, that neon. I love it. There's just it hits me in this very specific way of, I love a lot of these like synthwave artists, and a lot of the music I
Yes.
listen to is there's kind of this similar genealogy to it.
Like
Where that's
you expect New Order to be playing in the background while
right,
you're reading the
exactly,
book.
exactly. And it's like it's funny because we're talking about, a 60s property being made in the 2020s. And it's giving me this feel that's almost reminiscent of like an 80s nostalgia thing in certain ways with the feel. There's this whole mix of things, the pedigree of it that I'm picking up on and feel, and it's very current because even though it's a mix of these sources, it feels like it's creating something new with it to me, and it feels really, really, really cool.
Yes, you're
Um,
absolutely right. You're
yeah,
absolutely right. It really does have a modern feel to it, but it still captures that retro nostalgic buzz. And like you see the styles. You definitely have seen what the characters looked like in the 60s, and even in the 90s film they really did modernize them just a little
hmm
bit, but they still kept that classic feel to it.
yeah,
And even though, like you said, it definitely doesn't seem to have a lot of that 60s camp, but they don't steer clear from the camp, which I
no,
think is really
it
important, because
works.
that's what I think is very important about David Pepose, because he's giving us his own vision, but he is capturing all of those classic mannerisms because he's paying proper tribute to the franchise. And he does it with Space Ghost. He did it with Captain Planet 2. So I give him so many accolades for what he has done with this specific title.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones that, sometimes when we've talked about books on this channel, it just strikes you that this feels like a book that they really wanted to make. And this really does strike me as he had the chance to do a couple of those other stories, which really are good, and I'm sure his heart was in it too. There's something about this one that really strikes me as like he wanted to do this, didn't he? Didn't he? You can feel it. You can really
Yeah.
feel that. Yeah, that wasn't just raise your hand. Who wants to take this? No, there was some intent behind making this one, and it's pretty
I
clear.
I kind of feel that when it comes to all the retro titles that are out there, the people that get on board are the ones that want to do it.
Really
I
want
mean,
it.
what
Yeah.
I could definitely tell that Joe Casey was dying to
hmm
write Johnny Quest.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could definitely tell that when Kelly Thompson was tapped to do the
Power.
first 3 issues of Powerpuff
Yeah.
Girls, you could definitely tell that her heart and soul was in it, trying to capture that beautiful nostalgia. And I will definitely say that Declan Shalvey and Ed Bryson did something completely original with Thundercats and
hmm
Silverhawks, respectively. But again, the thing is, when you read them, you just feel something. And even in the Energon universe, you
Yeah.
can see how much fun Josh Williamson is having writing his take on G.I.
hmm
Joe. Daniel Warren Johnson's first 25 issues of Transformers are incredibly good, but they are not Transformers of the 1980s. It's something different, but they still, it's the faces, it's the colors, it's some of the lines that come out of these books. That's how you know they're hard. And listen, Jason Aaron's Thundar the Barbarian, man. I'm telling you, that's a
Mhm.
book you should check out, especially because you are a fan of his.
Yeah.
That book is crazy good.
And you know what
But
I'll
Speed Racer
say?
is amazing.
What I'll say about the tone in Speed Racer 2 that I think really works with these, broadly speaking, the nostalgia books, but I think that Speed Racer gets so right, is there's a levity to a lot of it, but it is used not, I mean, sure, there's nods to the campiness and it still has those fun moments, but it's really used as a way to heighten some of the drama. I mean, we talk about the theme of family and how important family is to the property and to what happens in these first 6 issues, not 5, but first 6 issues. And I really think were it not for the levity there, it wouldn't hit as hard. The various things like I truly felt for these characters at multiple times. I felt the stakes of it, and I often feel that there's a place in this world for the comic story that is not a the world is going to end story. It's funny to talk about that because most of what you and I have done on this channel together recently have been these ultimate journey episodes where we really are talking about universe defining, clash of the titans, the entire world, the entire multiverse will change from all this. And in Speed Racer, we're really talking about one guy's dad, or in this, a few guys' dad.
Yeah,
you know,
let's not
but
let's get back in order here.
I know. But we're really, it's limited, right? It's like the world is not going to end tomorrow if Speed doesn't pull this off. But you just feel the weight of it. It's like when he gets nervous, when he's unsure, when something doesn't go his way, when he's sabotaged, any hurdle that is faced makes you get this little lump in your throat because it's like these stakes are more than multiversal. These stakes are personal. I can relate to these stakes in many ways, So I just I think that's something that is there for the taking in a lot of these kind of nostalgia titles, and I think David Pepose did exactly what he needed to do to capture that in
So when
these
we take a look
books.
at issue number 0, we actually get two stories. We get the main story that's going to go into the main Speed Racer title, but also there is like a world of Speed Racer beyond the comic, and
Yes.
I'm actually on board for all of it right now. There was a Racer X story at the end of the issue number
Yep.
0 that is written by Mark Russell. He is now he just, as a matter of fact, this week, the penultimate issue of his Racer X miniseries just came out this week, and I just read it, as a matter of fact, before we started going on the recording, and it was good. And there's also a quarterly series called Tales from the Road, which is just these individual standalone Speed Racer stories that are really, really cool. I think the first Tales from the Road was actually the birth of Speed Racer, and it was
Hmm.
actually one of the funnier books that I read. But, you know, these books are just so enjoyable and they're so great. And issue number 0 is a very interesting story, and that's where it really captures the vibe. It's like Speed is basically in the middle of a dog race and he's getting chased by the cops.
Hmm.
It's such an interesting way to start things, and that's where you realize, okay, this is going to be interesting because Speed Racer, when you take a look at the legacy of the character, is the all-around true blue good guy.
Hmm.
He's not so good in this book. He's actually got a little bit of an edge, but it's very entertaining to watch him in this drag race.
Yeah, and it's an edge that doesn't become that at this point tired kind of like grimdark gritty thing. It's just kind of like, all right, so he's not a Boy Scout, but there's certainly no part of me that thinks this is a criminal we're watching, right? It's just
Exactly.
willing to bend the rules, willing to do what it takes, and getting a little bit of that glory too. It's about that. I mean, we see, whether or not he's fully on board with what is essentially the what up YouTube of streaming his exploits and all of that. This it makes it feel more believable and more young. And I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that kind of wanting to make a name for themselves out
And
of this
yeah,
talent that they have.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the other thing. I love the take on Spritel in this story because
Hmm.
Spritel you see,
Yeah.
that's the thing that I love about David Pepos. So now we've got Spritel as a YouTube streamer, but at the
Yeah.
same time, he's still reminding us, remember, Spritle and Chim Chim, what do they always do? They always stow it away in the trunk of the Mach 5.
And
So
we
we're
get
not going
that.
to forget that. We're not going to forget that. We're going to keep that in there, and we're going to make it work. Because, you know, there's the camp right there, but it works.
Yeah, yeah, and we get that right from the beginning, and it's that little wink to the people who are there for the fact that they are familiar with it in some way. And it's fun. It's a modernizing take, and I don't mean to be a broken record, but I think it really just pulls in all of these things to make it feel very of this moment, and it succeeds.
Mm-hmm. And so then we immediately get into the main story. And again, um, I had to give a lot of credit to the cover artist, but of course, I went out and got myself these amazing 1967 retro covers because you see, I'm an A cover collector. I always try to go for the A covers, but if there's going to be a series of variants that are just so much better than those A covers, because if I'm going to want to collect these nostalgic titles, I want those nostalgic titles to feel like those nostalgic pieces of source material. So, of course, when they announced that these were coming out, I had to get the retro ones because this just captures the classic Speed Racer. I do
Yeah.
that with a lot of the comics when it comes to these. But
Hmm.
so we get a very different Speed Racer story in this book because this is pretty much an origin story in a very
Yeah.
different way. I mean, in this thing, the whole concept of the family for Speed Racer is somewhat shattered. I mean, the fact that their mom isn't even in the picture anymore. That was probably the first big twist that really grabbed me. Like, I never
Hmm.
would have imagined, based on what I remember from the movie and what I know in the world of the history of the original cartoon, the family was everything, but I never would have imagined a world where Speed Racer's mom is gone
Hmm.
due to the death of Rex, they're his older brother,
Yeah.
because that was always, you know, a major plot point of the original Speed Racer lore. But David Pepose really goes in a very different direction here, which, like you said, sort of feels like the stakes are a little bit more on the higher side.
Yeah, it feels that way because it feels so relatable because it's that idea, losing someone in the family and having this really kind of grounded take on, well, what does that mean for the people who are left behind, right? And the shadow of that day hangs over every issue. We see flashbacks to it. We hear Speed talk about the fact, every time he closes his eyes, he sees it. It's a very impactful thing, and because of the narrow scope and the personal scope of it, it's like I've been saying, it's that thing can be very relatable, which makes the stakes, even though they're so personal, be ones that feel so grand when you're reading it.
And it's and very similarly, from the source material, Pops doesn't want Speed in racing because of what happened to Rex. But of
Hmm.
course, Speed Racer just has that passion for that racing, and he knows it's all he can do, and he wants to do it. So he disobeys his dad, and he does do that in the original stuff. He does do that stuff, but I just feel that this time it's a little bit more intense simply
Yeah.
because of the fact that their whole world was really turned upside down after Rex's death. And then things take another interesting turn when we see a bunch of hoodlums come into the garage while Speed is ironically out, and they pretty much leave his dad on the brink of death. He literally suffers a heart attack
Hmm.
during this assault, and Speed actually makes it there to try and get him to the hospital. And getting him to the hospital was an adventure all in itself. Like the fact that he literally had to dodge the cops from in order to get his dad there. And again, that was something that I was very appreciative about. I think that leads a little bit into the second issue because the inspector, I know that he doesn't have the same name as the inspector in the original show, but I think it would have been really weird if he was called Inspector Detector in the comics. I don't
Hmm.
know. But anyway, the inspector does say to him, I'll let this one slide because we have to remember that that's what also happened in issue number 0. He had no reason to arrest him because he found that Speed's intentions were not criminal and that
Yeah.
they actually were somewhat straight and true to a degree. So
Yeah.
that's why he is not going to get Speed arrested in anything like that. And
Hmm.
now Speed knows that he's got to do something. He's got to try and get the money because his dad is not going to be able to live unless they actually cough up a lot of cash for some serious surgery.
Hmm.
And that's where he knows that the only thing that he can do is racing. And his dad just whispers to him before he goes into his coma, stay away from CAT.
Yeah, yeah. And that's it. So you get this kind of like, this sense of duty that comes from even within the confines of what we've read so far. Clearly there's something more like fun and youthful about his desire to be a racer, and the whole like kind of street racing thing as opposed to formal track racing thing makes it seem very unpolished and lighthearted and about the fun of it, and suddenly it becomes a drive, and he's got this reason behind what he does, and as we'll talk later on, that's important to others in the story. That's what differentiates him from just any other driver, is that he's found his purpose, and his
Yeah.
purpose is that theme of family that's been so strong already.
Yeah, and during the assault, he doesn't. He's actually not actually there. He's actually at the diner trying to chase his blues away with
Mhm.
an ice cream soda of all
Yeah.
things. There you go. There's a '60s nostalgic throwback for you right there. And that's another interesting thing that happens in this book. This is actually the point in time where he actually meets Trixie,
Yeah.
which of course is another major staple character in the Speed Racer lore. That's his girlfriend, although in this point, not his girlfriend, but they actually talk a little bit and they get to know each other, and meeting her is a very important thing, as we will see in the second issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's, in terms of how characters are used, I think Trixie is very fun. I really do enjoy Trixie in these stories, and I like the way that she gets to interact with Speed and have a more serious relationship.
Yeah.
But that this is early on, that they're not together, but you already see the hints of like, oh, they're interested. Yeah, that kind of fun thing. And it turns it into something a little bit more, so that even though that's where it's, assumedly going, it gives you that little bit of entertainment still in that side of the story too, a romantic one.
Yeah, and I also really like the fact that she's more than just Speed Racer's love interest. The fact that they
Right.
actually make her a woman of power, and they
Hmm.
actually make her the owner of an actual company that was she was inheriting from her family. And that's also where Sparky is. We always knew that Sparky was the racer mechanic. So the fact that he also is a fresh face to Speed in this book too also makes it very interesting as well. So of
Yeah.
course, Speed's got to get going on these races and wants to go into the Formula X circuit. And we get introduced to the CAT group, which is, again, what I love so much about this world is the names that they give these
Yeah.
characters.
And
I
this is the
love
this is like the campiest of the campy of what we get
Dante
in the story.
Furno. I
All
kind
of
of
the
love that. I
all
kind of
all
love
of
that.
all of his quote unquote like rogues gallery that comes to light throughout these stories. That's where you get the like, okay, we're gonna be comfortable being playful, and that's good because we should be because the
And and the
villains
and
are
the other
very
thing
silly.
that's incredible is that he gives enough time to each of the characters. So it's not just the heroes that you get to know. You really get a lot of time with the villains too.
Yeah.
So you really get to know a lot about Dante Furno throughout this entire story, which I think is pretty cool because, yeah, this guy is, you know, a sneaky businessman,
Hmm.
a real guy that tries to get to the top at all times, and he's actually a fun villain to read. He really
Hmm.
is.
Hmm. And all of the lackeys and everybody who Speed is up against, and whether it's the for lack of a better term, powers of their cars, or the various abilities of their cars, the way they dress, the names, all of it is very, very fun. And I think at the end of the day, for as much as I'm very focused on what elevates this book, being the theme of family, the seriousness, the way the stakes are held up, and the way it really makes you feel, it is important to note that this book is just fun, and then that's a big part of it. And it's you get this one, I mean, and as he moves into this world of racing, particularly in the actual like Formula X, like main branded races like that, there's some very really great action
Oh
scenes
yeah.
throughout this book. And I'll say I think one of the things that's a strength of the art in the story is that I find, for lack of a better word, I find it very legible. And I feel that all of the action is very, sometimes, I don't know about you, Steve, you read a lot of comics. Sometimes when I get a book that's too action heavy, my eyes can glaze over the page.
Yeah.
If there's page after page of like not much dialogue or none at all, and it's just kind of like an explosion, a motion line, all of this, it can get very noisy to me, and I'll just kind of like let it wash over me and be like, this scene is occurring before me. But not here. I really find the action to be focused and legible, and I can follow it, and it is as much part of the story as the scenes where they're talking before the race. And I think that's a serious strength here, particularly as someone who occasionally has problems with action set pieces like
I
that.
think I can give you a better description of the art, especially when it comes to the action sequences.
Mhm.
It's smooth.
Well, yeah,
It's
that's
very
a good way to put
smooth.
it. Yeah,
It's very fluid. There are certain points where I'm actually reading the racing scenes and I'm like, I can literally think the cars are actually moving. Like, it
yeah,
really does feel like I'm watching a race. And it's not just that, it's also the pacing. And we also have to give the credit to the announcers.
yeah,
Jim Charger and Rusty Muffler. What a great combo. It reminds me of how I enjoyed watching the movie because it's like you got into the race and then you saw the crowd's reactions to the race and then you saw the announcers' reactions to the
mhm,
race. You really got the full race from all different sides. And like I said, again, David Pepose just writes it well. He
yeah.
paces it beautifully, and David Tinto's I don't know if it's David or David. If we share this with David Pepose because we happen to know him on social media, maybe he'll help us out because I really want to know. I must have butchered the artist's name way too many times already, so hopefully Mr. Pepose can give us some clarity.
Clarity.
But no, his artwork is so smooth and fluid. It allows your eyes to capture everything and not miss anything.
Yeah, yeah. Also, I will note the announcers, there's something very wrestling about it to me. The kind of interplay of the two people viewing it, the stakes being raised. Oh, that kind of, there's something very which makes it theatrical in a different way. Not theatrical like action set piece, but theatrical in terms of wink wink, theatrical in terms of really being a spectator to it as opposed to a news announcer. There's something really kind of in the moment and with the not actors, not performers, but racers, with the way that they are, overlay themselves on the scenes when they're present, that really works for me. And it has that level of, again, fun. It brings a lot of that to it, and I think it's
Yeah.
important to center just how fun this book is.
Yeah, and of course, I love when he gets into his first race. He meets one of the CAT lackeys, who is, of course, the iconic Snake Oiler. That is a big
Hmm.
name in the lore of Speed Racer. And the other thing I also love, because Matt Fraction actually currently is doing this in his run on Batman right now. I love that when every single car uses one of their gadgets, it lets you know which one it is. And
Yes,
let's also
every
say,
time.
and let me guess, you totally got goosebumps when you saw Speed Racer use his auto jacks for the
Of
first
course,
time.
of
Everybody
course,
loves that moment.
of course,
I
and I
love watching that scene in the movie. I always wanted to fast forward and rewind and see those jump jacks in the movie because it's just so cool.
cool. Yeah, no,
It
it's
is
cool.
just so cool.
And you're right. There's something really fun about calling it out each time, like the power, like here it comes. Like
Yep.
it gives you that very, not just talking about like the nostalgia of it and the fun of it and the comic book of it and the campiness of it. It really, I mean, that feels very video gamey to me. It feels very like, not to be on the nose, but like kart racer to me,
Not just
it's like these
that.
are
I
abilities.
it's not just that. I mean, look, I'm gonna really age myself, but did you ever have a remote control racing car set?
Oh yeah, yeah. And
Yes, and
it's
you were were able to mount the tracks on the walls. You got to do the loop-de-loops and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. I don't know if the 67 cartoon had crazy racetracks like that, but oh man, the movie had those crazy racetracks. And so I'm so glad that they really wanted to capture those, like the fact that the cars can drive up on walls and go into crazy tunnels and do
drive
all those
through buildings and
Yes.
along the walls, like take out the grip tires and tear down all the rocks as you're driving, but just fun.
But yeah, so of course, Speed Racer's getting into dire straits, and just when he thinks that he is going to blow his first opportunity, his guardian angel shows up, and that, of course, is Racer X.
Racer X.
And I never knew the name of his car. I now know that Racer X's car is the Shooting Star. I always knew that it was the yellow number 9. I always knew what the Mach 5 was. And let me just say, when the movie came out, I was like obsessed with the Mach 5. I wanted to get Mach 5 everything. I think you've even seen my big Hot Wheels car.
Oh yeah.
Mach 5. And when they made the Funko Pop of Speed Racer in the Mach 5, I know that
too.
I had to get it. It's gorgeous. But yes, we had introduced to Racer X finally, and I love how they introduce him. The fact that he doesn't want him to race, and he actually says, all right, let's see if you're ready for this, you and me. Let's do a race. If you win, I'll let you in, and if you don't win, I get your car.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done, and I loved his introduction in issue 0. I know we kind of skipped over that part of the intro, but spotlighting the differences between him and Speed was really cool. But then in this moment, it flipped the script on that and instead showed us the humanity that's there when maybe you would be a little freaked out by this character from issue 0, because like there's a real violence to to him, which gets you worried because you're like, oh yeah, if he is who I've seen him to be so far, like he's gonna take that car. But you digest it and you realize there is a care behind all of that, and there's a a support in doing so. And obviously the way it goes, Speed does get to continue driving, and we do get additional issues to the series after that. But
of course,
I really did like that. It's the rival and mentor kind of rolled into one, and really plays both of those roles in this arc at the beginning.
Yeah, and of course, when Speed Racer loses the race, he gives him the keys, and then he realizes that when they weren't looking, the car gets stolen.
Yep.
By one of CAT's henchmen. I forgot his name completely. I think it was Archer something.
I'm gonna forget who it was in this scene, but I know. And then they have to go and chase down the Mach 5 and creating
that was a great scene too.
A great set piece, a fantastic one. That was I would just reference that was the drive through a building chase, wasn't it?
Okay, I was wrong. I got the name. Ace Ducey.
Ace Ducey. There you go.
Which is another. What a name! What a name!
Yeah, so that's, fantastic. And I know we talk a little bit about, the way that it plays out. And what I really like, and that Racer X clearly likes too, is Speed could have just taken the opportunity to leave. But he's the kind of person who's gonna honor his deals. And so he shows up like, no, you did win the car. That's what we talked about. And I think that shows a lot of who he is and who he's growing to be, which plays a key role.
Let's at least address the elephant in the room. We know who Racer X is, and we also get a little opportunity to see where he comes from, and we understand. Again, this is also not something that people who love Speed Racer can read. This is also very much a great read for newcomers to the franchise, because we see
definitely.
We see why CAT was something that Pops did not want Speed to be a part of, and that's because Rex was on their team. And of course, we all Speed Racer fans know, why was Rex there? Well, he had a falling out with Pops because they just didn't see eye to eye in the world of racing, and he left the family and went and joined the CAT team because he just wanted bigger and better things. And then, of course, it cost him his life to a certain in a certain way at the time. But we know, us fans, that Racer X is Rex Racer. And like you said, the
Yeah, and this
adversary.
is not a spoiler. This is known to the reader from the very
Mhm.
beginning.
This
This is
is
not
known to
something that
the
is meant to
fans
be
of
super
Speed
kept under
Racer since
wraps.
'67.
Yes,
Everybody
yeah. This
knows.
is the people in the story don't know this, but us as the readers, we know this from the jump. This is this.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. And as you said, the adversary and the mentor, but what Rex really wants is he wants Speed to succeed where he could not.
yeah,
And but he also, as and you can tell, this is the best way that he can be Speed's big brother. He wants to be Speed's big brother. Like, there's nothing that would make him happier than to take his mask off and say, "It's me, it's
yeah,
Rex."
yeah.
But he knows that he can't, because he did so much damage to himself, to his legacy, to his family. He wants the racers, particularly Speed, he wants them to stay pure. He doesn't want what corruptions he experienced to leak out from him onto his family. He wants his family to stay on that path that they always stayed on, the one that he unfortunately rejected on his own terms. He doesn't want them to lose that love and that passion for racing.
Exactly, exactly right. And that follows through into the issue that we come to next when he is able to continue racing and gets to have a race with Racer X. And this is where the kind of like rival and mentor part really comes to the forefront of everything, because we get these amazing set pieces of them racing together, but very clearly still against each other. It's still a competition. It's still a
But
competition.
it's a competition between the two of them, but they're both fighting the same battle, because
Exactly.
now CAT and Dante Furno have thrown their secret weapon into the new race, and that, of course, is the Black Jaguar, also known as Kim Jugger.
Hmm.
And the other thing, which was also something that was sort of alluded to in the Speed Racer movie when they were in the Casa Cristo race, this was the race where Rex met his
Yeah,
demise. So, of
yeah,
course, his demons are there, and bad feelings are filling Speed's head, because he's like, oh, dear God, I'm now going on the exact same path that my brother did. Will I survive? And he wants to, because he knows that if he doesn't, his dad is not going to make it. And that's really what it's all about. And that's the thing. When he and Rex had a little bit of a spat during the time when they tried to get the Mach 5 back from Ace Ducey, that was also when he basically poured his heart and soul in front of Rex and said, "This is why I'm racing. I'm racing because my dad might not live, and I don't want to lose him. I've already
hmm,
lost my brother. I do not want to lose another family member." And that's where Rex, as Racer X, is is happy.
yeah,
He can't show it, but he is thrilled that Speed is not there for the fame and fortune.
yeah.
He's there for good intention. And
That's it.
that's why he says, "We will race, but we will help each other,
Yeah,
because we have a common enemy. Let's
yeah,
take them out, and then it's just you and me."
yeah, yeah. And so there's that level of like, all right, he's found a good reason to race, that meaning that he was looking for. Proud of him that it's family that motivates him, because family means so much to Rex too. And then that pride also leads to, and we're going to do this the right way. We're really going to race each other also.
Yeah. And we got to come back to Trixie, because Trixie is
Yeah.
also someone that firmly believes in family, because
Yes.
she's very nervous about taking a risk on Speed as a sponsor, because she definitely doesn't want to let her family down. I mean, we don't really know much about her family in terms of, are they gone or are they actually still with us? But she has a legacy to fulfill too, and
Hmm.
she also doesn't want to be the loser in this race.
Yeah.
But again, I'm trying to remember some of the moments that she has. I mean, I truly love her as a character. I don't want people to think that I'm not reminding myself of how great of a character she is. But of course, there's a lot of flirting between the two of them, Speed and
Right.
Trixie. And I also love the fact that, she gives him her number, and of course he doesn't call her.
Doesn't call.
I kind of love the fact that they threw that in there just because, but it wasn't even because of like asking her out on a date. It was actually for something completely different. And she says, "You didn't call me." I kind of love that.
Yeah. And no, and I mean I love her involvement in this big race at the end too, because you see the growth from willing to take a risk on Speed to being in his corner and really hoping for it. And of course there's the level of her own legacy, her own family's legacy, but you see that relationship start to grow. And so I
Mhm.
appreciated that.
Yep. And of course, Spritel, we completely
Yes.
forgot to talk about the fact that yes, even during the time when the car gets hijacked, he's in the trunk.
He's still in the trunk,
And
yeah.
he actually helps stop the bad guys, which
He
of course
does.
is hilarious because it reminds me of the movie. He's in the trunk during the race, and the best part is when they get all of Cruncher Block's guys up in that mountain, he's actually there to fight, and so is the monkey. And then of course the best part is the fight is over, they won, and Pops is like, "Spritel, where are you?" Like I just love. So I love the fact that this is the same thing. I love the fact that
Same
he
thing.
also says to Chim Chim, "We picked a bad day to sneak out." I like that. But my question is, and this is probably going to be the darkest I'm going to get. It's like, who? What does he care about? Like nobody's watching him.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's it's one of those you gotta if there's one thing you're gonna
You
take
gotta just throw caution into the wind and believe.
if there's one thing you're gonna take from something inspired by Saturday morning cartoons, sometimes kids just have to get away with doing things that they should never be able to do.
Exactly.
That's how you make a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yep. And so the final part of the story from part 4, from issue number 4 leading into issue number 5, of course, there's going to be a dirty trick there. And of course, what does CAT do? They throw some battery acid on the brakes, and of course, of the Mach 5. And at the end, and I mean, oh man, when you get to the last page of issue number 4, it's like you're hearing that narrator from like the
Yeah.
1966 Batman show. Is this the end of Speed Racer? Tune
Yeah.
in next week.
And I'm somehow like really along for the ride. Like it's not like I believed I guess that anything like terrible was gonna happen to Speed, but at the same time when Razor X comes out of there and saves him on the sharp turn, and then when they're doing it together and he figures out a way to do the spin and he gets through, it's like you I was very in it. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Like it was exciting. It's like because again, they don't need to die. He just needs to lose, and that would be the end of the world, And I didn't have any guarantee in my mind that he must win this one particular race. I was really, they had me. I was nervous there. It comes with the territory of what the stakes are.
And I love the fact that we really do get we get a truly great happy ending.
Yeah.
He wins the race. He's happy. Trixie's thrilled. Racer X is happy, and Pops is back. And you couldn't ask for a better ending than what we got. And of course, it does get a little bit melancholy at the end because we do see Rex take off the helmet, talking about how he wishes that he could be there to celebrate, but he can't. And
Hmm.
that's just the way it goes. And that's the first story arc of Speed
Yeah.
Racer, and it's wonderful. It
It's great.
really is.
It's great stuff. It's great stuff. Yeah, that ending leaves you with that little something to chew on about what the relationship with Rex is going to be or what it even can be, and who's going to be the one who's in the way of it being what it could be. But overall, it leaves reading it back. It's just so energetic. The pace is wonderful. The tone is wonderful. The art is wonderful. It's an accessible story that I'd have no problems recommending to someone. There's nothing objectionable in it for a young reader. There's no problem with reading it if you aren't familiar with any of the previous iterations of the Speed Racer franchise. Just a really good story. It just
Yeah.
is just a really good story, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah. I still think one of the funniest things was when I finished reading the first arc, I actually did reach out to David Pepose and I said to him, "Oh, please tell me there's more." Because
Yeah.
I really did not want this story to end on just one arc because unfortunately, especially when it comes to the big two, it's like if you don't get the numbers on your first story arc, the book is already done.
Yeah.
And that's one of the few things that I personally am nervous about when it comes to these kinds of titles, because when you take a look at how many people are buying copies of Absolute Batman,
Hmm.
and then you see how many people are buying the issues of Speed Racer, the numbers are crazy. You know, it's
Yeah.
staggering to see how
Yeah.
many people just don't know what else is out there
Yeah.
besides the superhero
Big
genre.
two. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the other reason why I go back to a lot of these nostalgic titles, because the names, the characters, the faces, it's like these are things that people know, and yet still we don't see the kinds of numbers that we would like to see. So thankfully, we did get a second story arc, and we'll talk about that soon. I mean, I'm knee deep into it. I'm loving
Yeah.
it. And the thing that I just want to tease to everybody, the second story arc is very different from the first story
Hmm.
arc in a good way.
Hmm.
But that story arc is going to be ending with issue number 10. I'm hoping and praying there will be arc number 3, because I
Hmm.
really do not want to see this book end so quickly.
Yeah. And it's great, talking about like a lot of people, they're focused on the big two. They might not even know anything else. I'm always appreciative of labels that are willing to take the risk, do something different, a non-superhero story, something that might be a little bit more niche at times, but I think that there's an opportunity here for a lot of different people would get a lot from these stories if they were to read them. This is a very fun one. Like I said, easy to share with anyone, whether you're familiar with the source material or not, young, old. I think there's something that different people will read different things into it. They'll care about different characters more or less. They'll think more or less about the family versus the fun action of it. But you know what? It's a real like something for everybody kind of fun story. It just is. So I'm glad it's here, and I'm glad it has continued into a second arc.
Yes. So I think that's going to wrap up our discussion today on this flashback episode. Andy, thanks very much for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
Great time.
People, please put your comments in the box below. Let us know if you're out there, if you're reading Speed Racer, because this really is a phenomenal book. Like I said, this became my favorite read of 2025. It is so wonderful. I couldn't put any issue down. And every single time I finished, I said this before, I just felt so satisfied, and yet still wanted more.
Yeah.
So let us know if you're reading it. And if you're not reading it, I'm hoping that you saw this video and you're interested in now checking this book out. It's really not that difficult to find. If you can't find it at your local store, there are so many ways that you can obtain this. The trade's out there as well. So please definitely check out the first story arc. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're up to date with all of our latest content. Andy and I will be back soon, and we're looking forward to chatting again. And we'll see you in the next one.
Sounds good. Bye, everybody.